medical issues that matter, now on BBC One with Watchdog Healthcheck.
Hello, I'm David Bull.
And I'm Kate Sanderson.
And welcome to Watchdog Healthcheck. We're live from Television Centre. This evening we investigate the NHS in a state of emergency. Tonight's programme is all about the body beautiful. Yes, we're out of the studio. This week we're on the town and we are in London's Docklands. Tonight's programme is all about sex and babies, and we're here shopping for answers. On the programme tonight, thousands of operations cancelled as elderly people are forced to live in hospitals. Crisis in casualty. Patients waiting for days on end. Will things ever improve?
Measles, mumps and rubella, the triple or the single vaccines. Should parents now have the choice?
Delivering babies to schedule. Should the NHS pay for these caesareans?
The great vitamin debate, how much good is any of it doing us?
Beating heart attacks, the drug that's transforming lives, but only available to a fraction of patients at high risk.
A singing career ruined by a bad nose job. How can you be sure a cosmetic surgeon is any good?
Botox, the facelift in a bottle, but it's not licensed for treating wrinkles in the UK.
What price a showbiz smile, the cost of acquiring perfect teeth?
TB. Doctors thought it was asthma and hundreds became infected. Is this the future of contraception? Women on the patch and men on the pill. And breaking for the border, the English students heading for Wales to get free prescriptions. That's Watchdog Healthcheck. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you also for your calls and emails. Do keep them coming in. Tell us about the stories that you want us to investigate. Our phone answerers are here, so ring them 0870 010 7070, or you can write to us at the usual address, or you can email us. The way to do that is to log on to the Watchdog website, the address bbc.co.uk/watchdog. But first tonight, thousands of operations are being cancelled because hospital beds are being taken up by elderly people. They're fit enough to leave, but they can't. In Birmingham, the problem is so bad that accident and emergency patients have been treated on ambulance trolleys outside the hospitals because there are no beds available inside. How safe are Britain's hospitals? Attacks on patients, nurses and doctors are at a record high. On Friday, a man was jailed for 10 years for attacking Bristol nurse Alison Shortman. And at St Thomas's Hospital in London last week, 2 incidents: an attempt to snatch a 2-year-old girl from a children's ward and an attack on a nurse by a man wielding a knife. The hospital's chief executive, Dr. Jonathan Michael, is here to explain what went wrong. But before that, we've been undercover across the country to show how easy it can be to get onto a ward unchallenged. St Thomas's Hospital in London. It's 3 days since a little girl was snatched from the children's ward. So will we be able to get into the same ward? First, our researcher walks past a security guard. We aren't challenged. We go up to the door but don't go in. We pass the security guard a second time, then turn round to go back in. The guard is busy talking to nurses. It's the 3rd time he's seen us, but we go straight past. The door to the ward has a lock, but it's open. We're inside for 2 minutes before anyone asks who we're looking for. By then, we've seen details on a board of all the children on the ward. We filmed with a hidden camera in 14 hospitals across the UK. In 5 of them, we were stopped by a nurse within 30 seconds of entering a ward. But in the other 9, we managed to walk onto wards, into treatment rooms, and even into intensive care. With a hidden camera, we secretly filmed the dirty conditions inside 4 British hospitals. At the Royal London Hospital, a corridor with medical waste bins next to what appears to be dried blood. Here's another littered corridor, and a dirty patient shower with a used wet towel on the floor. At the Victoria Infirmary in Glasgow, bin bags and rubbish in corridors, and dirt and dust on windows and floors. This ward at the Bristol Royal Infirmary had litter and used paper towels on the floors, and the TV room looked like it had been ransacked. In the corridors, waste bags, including this one of medical waste. Finally, the toilets at St Mary's Hospital in London were filthy. And there was more blood. Security measures vary in every hospital. This is King's College Hospital in London. They've recently spent £3 million on a state-of-the-art security system, including 112 closed-circuit television cameras, personal alarms carried by every member of the accident and emergency department, and panic buttons. Well, with me now is Chief Executive of Guy's and St Thomas's Hospitals, Dr Jonathan Michael. Well, joining me now is Dr Liam Fox, MP, Shadow Health Secretary. Well, joining me now is John Appleby. He's from the King's Fund, an independent charity promoting better healthcare. Well, joining me now is Eric Appleby, Director of Alcohol Concern, and Mark Hastings from the British Beer and Pub Association. Well, Steve Thornton joins me now. Thank you for coming in. How can you justify closing all these accident and emergency departments when people have to travel 20, 30 miles at a time when time is absolutely vital? How can you answer the John Jones story? His widow believes that he would be alive if Kidderminster Hospital was still open. Is that acceptable?
In cases like that, the critically important thing...
It's very difficult to treat someone in an ambulance. I've done
Indeed
it.
it is.
Kate? How do you answer that? People are waiting on trolleys. Newspaper headings are saying casualty units fundamentally unsafe, horrific waits, patients waiting on trolleys for 20 hours, a 93-year-old lady on a trolley for 90 hours. It's unacceptable.
Oh, I agree that that's unacceptable. I think we're now talking about wider issues in terms of resourcing the National Health Service.
You must be embarrassed by the lack of security that we showed in that film. This was last week. The same time, we managed to get onto that ward. We saw confidential details of patients on the board. That's not on, is it? No one challenged us. 10 minutes down the road is King's Hospital. They've brought in, what, 112 closed-circuit television cameras, personal alarms, panic buttons. What are you going to do? The British Medical Association have told Healthcheck today that this is a national crisis. Would you agree? What did you think of the Department of Health statement?
Well, I think it's pretty pathetic.
Well, the Department of Health said, well, in fact, in the NHS plan, they have given £900 million over 3 years to keep elderly patients out of hospital. So they say they're doing something.
But they're obviously not, and it's not working.
But isn't this very easy for you to say? You're in opposition. It's a very easy position to be in. They inherited this from you. In 1993, the Tories capped the government social security budget. They say they inherited the problem.
Well, they didn't actually inherit this problem. Beds have been lost in huge numbers over the past 2 or 3 years.
At the end of the day, all politicians do the same thing. They play this political football, and the people who lose are people like George and Rita Hemingway. Is it all about money, or shouldn't we adopt some of those French systems? When I was in France, one of the things that impressed me was the way that you pay for your treatment, you claim it back, and therefore you don't waste doctors' time. You really only go to see them when you're ill, and there is a huge problem in Britain with people wasting doctors' time. Tony Blair yesterday said that he will sort out the NHS by the next election, or we should vote him out. Will he do it? You must be fairly keen on this drug if you campaign so hard.
Yeah, it's really important.
If those deaths are attributed to that drug, that's a big problem.
Yeah, there is a side effect profile with it. It is an antidepressant drug.
We've got a lot more problems in Britain. If you look at, say, other countries, Canada, 4 possible deaths, and also Australia, 1. Is there a problem with GPs, as we heard in the film, not knowing enough about that drug? Younger and younger people are drinking, they're drinking more, some of the highest levels across Europe. Why? Who's responsible for this? It's your fault. You're producing drinks that don't taste of alcohol, that are very sweet and very easy to drink. Do you really believe that women should have the choice to say, I want a caesarean? It is a major abdominal operation, and there are risks of infection, of bleeding, of damage to the bowel and the bladder, and you know that more than I do. What about the cost, very quickly? £750 more to have a caesarean, they stay in hospital. That's on the NHS, it's a cash-strapped NHS.
Do you want to put a price on choice?
Surely part of the problem is that the obstetricians are increasingly worried about the litigation if a delivery goes wrong. In a caesarean, you have a more controlled environment. Aren't you really saying, I'd much rather you had a caesarean? How can you justify not having a national screening programme for a disease that kills 10,000 men in this country?
There is no firm evidence that a routine screening programme would save lives.
Equally, though, there's no evidence that a routine screening programme wouldn't save lives.
Precisely.
It's a very hard line to follow, given that someone like Doug Davison from that film says, you know, if I hadn't had that test, I'd be dead. What about Roy Hessian as well? He says his tumour is incurable, it's too late. That's a high price to pay, isn't it? It seems clear that we need more regulation.
Yes.
Does this new legislation go far enough, in your opinion?
No, I don't think it does.
What about doctors like Norton and other doctors who are not doing it properly? Does it weed them out?
No.
Next, polycystic ovary syndrome. It's one of the leading causes of infertility in the UK, but a lot of people hadn't even heard of it until Victoria Beckham talked about it on Parkinson.
I had polycystic ovaries, which again is something I'm sure lots of women can relate to.
Using technology to ensure children avoid serious or life-threatening conditions is a massive medical breakthrough. But some people say that we've gone too far, that we're meddling with God's work to create perfect babies. Others say it's a fine line to tread. The health service in France has been voted #1 by the World Health Organization. Unlike here in Britain, where we came 18th, behind countries like Italy, Spain, Oman, Austria and Japan. So I'll stay here then, and I'm going over there to find out how France has done so well. The response time is measured from the moment that ambulance control receives details of the emergency to the time that the crew arrive on the scene and press this button here. But ambulance trusts across the country have told Healthcheck that the targets set by the government aren't always being met. Next, cystic fibrosis. It's the UK's most common life-threatening genetic disease. 7,500 people have it. 5 babies are born with it every week. There's no cure, and most people with CF will die before reaching the age of 30. Treatment can help, but that relies on early diagnosis and screening, and that is only just becoming available throughout the UK. The big breakthrough would be a cure, and one is in sight. But researchers aren't there yet. Do you think cosmetic plastic surgeons have got a good public image?
No, I think it's appalling, and quite frankly, that with the help of these cosmetic clinics, I'm not surprised.
After the surgery, been left with breasts that are size 30FF.
And it wasn't just the size of her breast that was the problem. After the operation, there were other complications. In many cases, patients don't receive a medical consultation, nor do they even see the surgeon before the operation is carried out. Instead, surgical advice is given by non-medical advisors acting as sales consultants for the clinics.
They don't know whether you need the operation or not. They haven't a clue. What, are you going to strip off and show me your breast? Ah, there's nothing wrong with your breast. But, oh, they'll find something wrong. They get you signing up the chequebook before you know where you are.
Of course, there are many thousands of people who are happy with the cosmetic surgery they've received, and they feel it's made a real difference to their lives. But if you're considering a breast enlargement, a facelift, or any cosmetic procedure, it's worth remembering that all of them are surgical operations, and all of them carry a risk. According to the government's own figures, 1 in 10 NHS patients are harmed each year while undergoing hospital treatment. That's around 850,000 of us, and mistakes made by hospitals can be catastrophic. Next tonight, statins. They're drugs being used in the fight against coronary heart disease. They help in recovery after heart attacks. They can also help prevent them by lowering cholesterol. How rude. Go now. If I don't want to spend that sort of money on veneers, which do look fantastic, what about bleaching?
Right, bleaching or tooth whitening, and you can have the power whitening, which can be done in dentist surgery, where the dentist will paint on a concentrated gel of peroxide, use a very powerful light, it's a laser light.
Those who have suffered from violence at the hands of the mentally ill may favour the new legislation. But some psychiatrists are concerned that giving them the power to detain people with serious mental illness could be seen as turning them into jailers. Well, it's now reached that time where I'm supposed to drink my own urine. But before I do, I thought I'd tell you about the history. Pioneered in the UK in the 1930s by an Englishman, and now many celebrities...
Get on with it!
You're right. Here goes. Well, Dr. George Lewis is still here. I have to tell you, I didn't drink my own urine. Was I right? Do you think urine therapy can be good? Is it therapeutic? Thank you also for all your emails, all your calls and all your letters since last week. Now, we have our computer with us, so get emailing. Remember, this really is your show, and we are live. Our address, as usual, www.bbc.co.uk/Watchdog. Irina Stanley, thank you very much for phoning in. She says she drinks her own urine. She lived in New Zealand, used it for cuts, sores and styes, and also drank it because it was good for internal ailments. Well, we've had loads of calls and emails about dirty hospitals. Gloria from London has called in saying nurses don't wash their hands and don't wear gloves. Well, we've had loads of emails, calls and letters about this. One particular one, a woman who has emailed in and said that she recently had liposuction, rhinoplasty and an eye lift, not in this country but in South Africa. She said the job was fantastic, but she did her homework. Well, sadly, that is it for this week. Thank you very much indeed for watching, but from all of us on the team, good night.
Good night.